Now, I don't often like to criticize Israel publicly. It's not that I don't think it's okay. In fact, I think we actually have a religious obligation, a duty. Tochacha, rebuke, is a mitzvah, a commandment. When we see somebody doing the wrong thing, we're supposed to say something. We're supposed to speak out and set them on the right path for their own sake, for their own benefit. So I believe Tochacha against the state of Israel, her government, is something that as Jews we are required to do. And yet, even though I do at times criticize publicly the government of Israel, I'm very hesitant and wary when I do so. Because I recognize the dangers of speaking publicly. I recognize that words can be taken out of context. I recognize that it's very easy for someone to use a rabbi or any Jew's criticisms of Israel as a shield, as a way to protect themselves and deflect criticisms of their own anti-Semitism hiding as anti-Zionism. Why can't I say it? The rabbi said it. Or this Jewish person I know said it. Why can't I say it as well? In fact, that's another part of our tradition. In the rules of Lashon Hara, you're not allowed to say something nice about somebody if you're talking to someone who you know dislikes that person. Why? Because it might lead them to say something bad about them. And you're responsible, our tradition tells us. We have to be very careful about our words. Not just the words we say, but what those words might lead others to say. So I want to be very careful this morning as I discuss Israel. Because Israel is our homeland. And even at times when I have differences of opinion or I have criticisms of what the government of Israel does, I very much love Israel. I very much believe in the right of a Jewish state, a Jewish homeland. And I know that those of you gathered here with us today feel the same way. But I fear that as time goes on, as this new government forms and begins to rule, I will be using this bima more and more to speak about issues that we are facing. In his quest to form a new government with himself at the helm as Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu has elevated Itamar Ben-Gvir, a member of the Otzma Yehudit party, to become the National Security Minister. It's a new position giving civilian control of certain military and police matters to one of Israel's most far-right and extremist politicians. Ben-Gvir has a long history of linking himself with racist and anti-Arab organizations and activists, and he's even been convicted of inciting racism. In rallies, some of his supporters chant death to the Arabs. Another member of this new government, potentially, the leader of the religious Zionist party, Smotrich, is slated to join the cabinet potentially as the finance minister. And he's spoken out about non-Orthodox Jews in Israel and in the diaspora. And he's called on the government of Israel to stop recognizing non-Orthodox conversions that are performed in Israel. It's only a recent thing that they've been doing that. And it's because of the High Court. But he also seeks to limit the control the High Court has in overturning laws made by the Knesset, by the government. I know many Jews in the diaspora who, when they have to defend Israel against false claims of Israel being an apartheid state, one of the things they bring up is how Israel's hospitals treat everyone equally, Jew and Arab alike, Jewish person and non-Jewish person, Israeli and non-Israeli, even to the point where doctors will do anything they can in an Israeli hospital to save not just the victims of terrorism, but also the terrorist who committed the atrocity. And yet, not a low-level position, but a high-level cabinet minister, will be the same person who once publicly said that his Jewish wife shouldn't have to give birth next to an Arab woman. It makes our job of defending Israel here in the diaspora that much more difficult when there are people like that in power. Avi Moaz, set to become the deputy minister, is the leader of the Noam party. His portfolio will focus on Jewish unity. Unity of the Jewish people in Israel, unity of the Jewish people around the world. But what does that mean? He's made his politics very clear. Many often anti-LGBTQ statements alienating a portion, a large and important portion of the Jewish community that's only recently begun to be recognized and appreciated. He wants to end the Pride Parade. Again, something many of us in the diaspora talk about when we discuss how Israel is a beacon of democracy, a place that gives rights to all of its citizens, rights that are afforded to nobody else in the Middle East, particularly when it comes to the LGBTQ population. Jewish unity is what his portfolio is going to include, as he alienates large swaths of the Jewish community. And he wants to limit the law of return to permit only Orthodox conversions. There are many of you in this room who are Jews by choice. My wife is a Jew by choice. She went to a conservative Beit Din here in Toronto, so it's conservative both in the capital and the small c sense. And Israel is supposed to be the homeland for all the Jewish people. It's supposed to be my homeland. But here is somebody who'll be working in the Prime Minister's office who has publicly called that non-Orthodox conversions should not be accepted to make Aliyah. So the homeland that's supposed to be the place that any Jew in the world can go if we ever face violence, if we ever face discrimination, if we ever face the terrors of the past. It's supposed to be my homeland, but it's not my wife's, not my daughter's. How can Israel be my country if every Jew, if my family can't all go there? Outgoing Prime Minister Yair Lapid sent an open letter this past week to all of the mayors and local government heads in Israel, asking them not to cooperate with the new government. Sounds like a riot, a coup. But I want to read a part of the letter that he wrote. I write to you with great concern for the future of the educational system and of the country. Since the new government which is being formed in Israel has abandoned the education of our children and passed it to the darkest and most extreme elements in Israeli society. As you know, this is an extremist, racist, homophobic, and dangerous party. I call on you not to cooperate with the Unit for External Programs and Cooperation in the Education Ministry, so long as it is controlled by Mawaz. The great responsibility for the educational materials which our children learn in school now passes to you. In order to preserve a national and liberal education system, as we have had until now, to activate the rights of the local authorities to design education in its jurisdiction, you must now serve as guards. You are not alone in this battle. We are here and we will be happy to help and cooperate in any way possible. He's calling on local governments to ensure that the national government's policies won't translate into educating and raising a generation of Israeli youth indoctrinated in these ideas. So far, Tel Aviv, along with 3 other municipalities, have responded in the affirmative, that they would fund educational programs themselves out of their own local budgets if the government takes the funding away. Ramat Gan Mayor Carmel Shama HaKohen even announced the city would fund 2 hours of liberal classes for every hour that is canceled by the government. It's complex. Israeli politics is not something I pretend to even begin to understand. It is a complex country. It is a complex system. And in the coming weeks, very soon we'll be announcing a program of education, a series of classes that I've mentioned before with different speakers from across the spectrum to really give a wide-angle view of Israel's politics. But the question is, what can we do? Besides learning about what's going on in Israel, what can we do to ensure that Israel really is the homeland to all Jews, our homeland? A place for each and every one of us, for our families, for our friends, for the members of our community. The outgoing Prime Minister is telling us one thing we can do is to take action into our own hands. He's calling on local leaders to help fund and to create any program that the government might end. That's something that we can support even from the diaspora financially. We can support Israel with our voice, speaking out for the vision of Israel that we believe in. We might not live there. We might not get to vote in the same way that its citizens do. And every country's citizens have a right to determine their own government. But we do have a right, if Israel claims to be our homeland as well, to speak out about what we want our homeland to look like. We have the ability to support organizations on the ground working in Israel, fighting for the values we believe in, fighting for liberal Jewish denominations to have an equal seat at the table, fighting for the rights of all Jews regardless of their gender, their sexual orientation, their identity. We read our Parsha this week, begins with a dream. Jacob dreams about a ladder connecting the heavens and the earth, the sacred and the profane, the holy, the extraordinary, and the mundane, the ordinary. And on that ladder, he sees angels going up and down. Not static. They're not standing still. They're going up and down. Israel is a complex country, more than perhaps any other, because of its special role. It is a sacred country. It is holy land. It is the homeland of the Jewish people. It is home to sacred sites that belong to all the major monotheistic religions and sites belonging to others as well. It adds to the complexity. And at the same time, while the government, the country, has to live up to that responsibility as a holy nation, it's also a nation, like any other country. There's mail and letters that have to be sent. There's garbage cans that have to be emptied and picked up. There's streets that have to be cleaned and paved. Sewers. Israel is that place, much like the ladder in Jacob's dream, where the extraordinary and the ordinary meet, where the sacred and the profane, the holy and the ordinary live together each and every day. And so as I think about what that means, I picture again that ladder and the angels climbing up and down. It's not a static balance. Human beings cannot ever bridge those two worlds. We are finite, and God, heaven, the ultimate, is infinite. So in our own spiritual journeys, we'll always be going up or down that ladder. We can't stand still. Israel, I fear, is taking some steps down that ladder with its current government, its incoming government. And yet, at the same time, it doesn't make Israel any less our homeland. It doesn't make the importance and our duty to support Israel any smaller. In fact, it makes our role even more important, our responsibility greater, to help lift Israel back up that ladder, to move it from the profane to the holy, to elevate it as a country not just here on earth, but a country that represents the divine, a country of heaven. Abraham Foxman this week explained, for those of you who don't know him, he was the longtime director of the ADL. He retired in 2015 after more than 50 years of being a part of that organization. He was someone throughout his career who always spoke out against public criticism of Israel. We have to have our divisions, our critiques internal, he believed. He came out in an interview this week stating just the opposite. That if some of these political leaders get their way, Israel would not be a country that he could support, that Jews like him could support in the diaspora. I hope that those words never come to be, that the government of Israel won't go in the direction that so many political commentators are fearing. But if it does, our duty is to speak out, is to speak up, is to support those doing the work on the ground to make Israel and allow it to continue to be a sacred community, a holy country, a land for each and every Jew, a land that represents our values, and Or Legoyim, a light unto other nations. May this be God's will. Shabbat Shalom.